Hey, you guys, welcome back for another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm Justine,
And I'm Lisa.
and if you're new here, this is the show that showcases the importance of music and mental health. If you enjoy the show and want to help support us, all you have to do is follow us on any app. We're on everything. Subscribe and leave us a rating or review. We really appreciate it so much. And today we are going to talk about an artist who Dave Grohl was quoted as saying, "When I look at someone like her, rock and roll isn't even close to dead." And that artist happens to be Billie Eilish.
Yes.
And I know it might be throwing people off a little bit that I'm taking over the reins for this episode, but I have more expertise when it comes to Billie. So Lisa's kind of let me take over for this episode. How are you today, Lisa? What's going on?
I'm good. And yeah, I just want to say, because admittedly, people will find out, I am a newer Billie Eilish fan, and I'll go into that later on. And this is one we've wanted to do when this album came out. So it's really, really cool. And Justine, you
Well, I
can
mean,
take
even
over.
before,
You can take, yeah,
we've been talking about this since pretty much
God,
the start of the podcast because she's
right?
a really important person for me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh no, yeah. And the thing is, like, you can take over anytime. People don't know. You just did the intro so good and so well.
well, thank
Versus
you.
me
I
that has to
tried.
be me that has to pause and be like, we have to redo because I'll laugh during it. But
She will. It's hilarious.
uh no, I'm doing this, like, too. This is a busy week, but I'm really excited to get back and recording with just us, because again, it's
Yeah.
been a hot minute. So I'm really excited about that. And listen, the only thing I don't like, and people know, I'm not a big fan of summer and the heat. And right now it's like dying in here in New Jersey. I'm like, where am I now? Illinois, New Jersey. But right now it is I'm not looking forward to it. I hate the heat. I love the summer attitude. Like, oh, we go out, we hang out. It's, lighter later. But I am already dying, and it's not even like July or August. But but how are you
Trust me,
doing?
I understand that as a disabled person
Yeah.
because, like, my conditions are exacerbated by
Yeah.
heat.
Yeah.
So, whenever it starts to get like, oh my gosh, it only has to start to be like 70 degrees, I'm done. I'm
Mhm.
overheating. I'm
Yeah.
sick all the time. So, what we do to help me is like, as soon as it starts getting a little too warm for me, we crank up the AC. We
Yeah.
always
So do
keep the
we.
house
Yeah.
super
Mhm.
cold because I'm like, I can cover up with blankets and sweaters, and I like that because it's like secure. But
Yeah.
what I can't do is rip my skin off because I'm so hot.
Yeah.
So we always just keep the house really, really cold as soon as I feel it's necessary. And I'm thankful for that because Tim lets it happen. He's like, that's fine.
Oh, I'm Tim because I let it happen for
Yeah.
G, because the same way with his stuff, he keeps it like ice cold. And again, it works for me because I hate the summer heat,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
we're
and
here.
especially I feel like most of us who are millennials who have parents of the boomer generation know that like we weren't allowed to have the AC on until
No.
like 100 degrees. And
Oh
it's
my God.
like, so now it's like we're the opposite and we're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We are not going to die with the windows open and the fans and all that business. We're just going to keep it really nice and cold. So
Yeah.
it's
So
nice having that little bit of like, you know, freedom finally, where you can just be like, I don't care. I'm hot. I'm putting on the AC.
I live in the AC. Like, people, like, G already knows if there's like a barbecue and it's like, 90s, and like, I am not going. I'll see you
Oh yeah.
later. Like, no, you're not getting me out. Besides the weather and us dealing with that, how are you doing?
How am I doing? You know, you're aware.
Yes, yes.
Just to fill in everybody, I've been dealing with some pretty bad like health stuff right now. I have been like physically ill, like off and on for like longer than a month. So,
Yeah.
and it's weird because like when I first got sick, like I was talking to Lisa about it and I was like, I don't know how I got a stomach bug, but it is bad. And I'm like, and then it would go away and then it would come back. And it's been like that for over a month. And anytime that I think I'm finally going to be fine, I'm starting to eat normal again, it comes back. So it's been it's been rough. But I'm going to be seeing the doctor later this month so I can talk to her about it because I don't know if it's just a new symptom of one of my current conditions or if it's something new. And either way, it sucks because it's not been fun to deal with, but I'm powering through,
Yeah,
just
no.
doing my best.
Yeah, like, so if anyone's have not heard Justine on the podcast, I think if you've listened to some of the
Yeah.
past episodes. That's why.
I was
I
gonna
mean,
say, like, I feel like it's safe to assume that at this point, if you're an avid listener, that if I am MIA at any time, whether it's an interview or if Lisa's fiance has to jump in and I'm not there, usually it's because I'm sick. Like
which
almost
he's wait.
always.
I told him flat out. I was like, "You may have to jump in sometimes," and he is like, "No one wants to
Yeah.
hear from me." I'm like, "Yes, they do because you have the number one most listened episode. Yes, they do want to hear from you." Uh,
Which he loves to know that he has that, by the way.
yeah, which yeah, it was great to do that one, but oh gosh. So I mean, I guess we should just talk about the wonderful
All
Billie
right.
Eilish because I think if you clicked on this, which I'm so excited about this one too, and I'm excited that you get to lead the way too, because again, you know 1,000 more than I could ever find in any
I
research.
it's I would say that I've been a fan of Billie Eilish since, ooh, I gotta think about it. I was not there from the very beginning. I
Mhm.
will say that.
Yeah.
I think I probably started listening to her around 2017 or 2018. So like earlier on, but not like from the very beginning. But yeah, we'll just get into it. But first, I want to talk about something which I think anybody who's not like an avid listener of her or just doesn't follow with like pop culture, they might not know it. But I want to talk about Phineas, which, if you don't know, that is her brother. And technically, Phineas and Billie are a duo. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, we're going just by her name in the charts and on the albums, but Phineas is the reason why we have a Billie.
Mhm.
Before Billie started her career, Phineas was on his own in a band called the Slightlies, which oddly enough, they played Warped Tour in 2015, which I laughed about because I was like, by that time, I don't think I was going to Warped
Yeah,
anymore.
me either. Got like
But
really metalcore-ish. So no, yeah, I didn't
I know
either.
it got really strange towards the end with how like who they were bringing in. But
Yeah.
like it's just it still made me laugh because it was like, ooh, we were that close to being around like
Mhm.
somebody who was like this talented, which is wild. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he also used to act. If nobody knows, if you're big into Glee, you're very aware because he was in the final season of Glee for a certain character that reoccurred. And he said that acting has helped him when it comes to writing because it helps him get into Billie's perspective, but also her vocal range. Because he can kind of just put his mindset, like if he's acting and be like, okay, I'm gonna kind of put myself in like Billie's like brain and write songs from her perspective, which he thinks is probably one of the biggest reasons that's made him successful as a producer and co-writer. Because whenever Billie has a certain story that she's wanting to tell, he's able to help her get that to where she wants it by bouncing off ideas back and forth to what she thinks is like the perfect envision of what she wants for a certain theme of a song, which I thought was like super interesting because like I'm not gonna lie, I did not fully remember that he was in Glee, and it's mainly because he looked totally different. He
Oh,
was a
I'm
lot
sure.
younger.
Yeah.
He had super long hair and he like had a clean, like shaven baby face. So like he looked completely different. I never made the connection until somebody talked about it and I was like, "Oh my god, that's hilarious." But not only was he in Glee, but he's also worked with other stars that are really big. So he's worked with Selena Gomez. He's worked with I'm probably gonna say her name wrong, so don't come for me for that. But like Camilla Cabello.
Yeah,
I
Camila
can't,
Cabello, or yes.
um,
Mhm.
and he's also worked with John Legend.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
I know, and he also did the entire score for a Jenna Ortega movie, which is called The Fallout. Don't get it mixed up with Fallout, the apocalyptic game show. This is like a teen drama called The Fallout with Jenna
Okay.
Ortega, but he did the entire score, which I didn't know about that either, which I thought was very impressive. I don't think people realize how much, like, even on his own right, like, how much he's done. What do you think? How do you feel about Phineas and his contributions to everything?
I mean, I think that so that's the thing too that I think obviously I've always known of Billie Eilish and Finneas, and admittedly, like I said, I'm a newer, I would say like a fan now, but I've always admired But for me, it just always is wild to think how young he is and to have that ability. And I know one of the things I always loved, and I know anybody that's a fan and listening knows this. I don't need to say this, but for me, and even just knowing that basically, again, like you said, it was him basically saying, I'm going to make you
Yeah.
the biggest pop star in the world. And I mean, hello. I mean, she's one of them. I know people will argue,
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, but for me, it just is, she's to
I
me,
think it's
it's,
different in comparison.
yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
as we get into more of the background and like the lore, you'll see. Like I think it's more impressive. Like
Oh,
sorry, Swifties. Like
oh, no, 1,000%.
please
Like,
don't come for me, but I think it's just a little different.
no, it is so different. That's one of the things I admire about Phineas and how smart he is. And even on this latest record, that
Yeah.
you really hear the growth in both of them, but specifically Phineas. And I know that he's behind so many things. And I know he was saying in that Zane Lowe interview they did where, there was a period where it wasn't fun anymore and he wasn't sure and
Yeah.
they kind of had to step back. And I think it shows the pressures of everything. And I'm sure he has a lot of pressure on himself of, okay, well, we're that team. And if I'm not doing well or if I'm not
Yeah.
having fun, we can't. And I just have so much more respect than I ever did because admittedly for a long time I was like, who are these? Like, who is Phineas? And who is Billie Eilish? Who are
It
these people that people are
it's
shoving
one of
down my
those
throat? And
things,
and yeah.
it's like they when you get a certain amount of, notoriety and hype, and because they're a little bit younger, and so if you're older from the outside, you're just like, okay, I don't want to like you don't
Yeah.
want to dive into that because you might think that like you're not gonna be able to connect as much because it's like
Mhm.
younger kids, and like you might judge like Billy based on like the way she dresses, or like because that happens a lot. I'm not People judge me for how I dress. You know what I mean? That's just kind of comes with the territory sometimes. And it's one of those things that once you start to really look into it and truly listen to the music, not just
Mhm.
like the ones on the radio, but I mean, actually listen to like all of the works and then see what has gone into it, that you're like, oh my God, like this is
Yeah.
impressive. Not to mention, to like you've already said, their ages, they're so young.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about that more in a second, but like, I don't think a lot of people realize how young that they started because, like,
Mhm.
obviously, my fiance, he's not a fan. He
Yeah.
is not a fan. Like, it's just always been something about them he does not like. He doesn't want to dive into it, but he knows I love them. And whenever like I really started talking more and more about my love for Billy's music and stuff, I told him, I'm like, well, do you realize how old they are and like how old she started? He had no idea. He thought that
Mhm.
she was way older than what she
No.
is, because I think most people don't think about people starting off as young as they had started. And it is just amazing, honestly.
Oh, it is, and that's the thing too, and the talent and just the thought that some of these earlier works were in their bedroom and right, and the fact of how
Yes.
good they sound even then, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing, like, I even
No,
think this
it's
podcast, like,
like
is like, oh.
just thinking back and like writing the script, I admittedly was like, I don't even understand how they could have made this kind of sound
Mhm.
like just in their house.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
Yeah, but no, I think Phineas is someone I mean, I think the core base of Billie
I
Eilish,
agree.
no,
I think he is underrated
but
personally.
right, but by the majority, right? And it's like,
Yeah. Because
um
like I said, like from the outside, if you're not a fan, you're not going to realize how much he's a part of it. You know what I mean?
no, I was so glad to do my deep dive when I fell in love with this record and just knowing
Yeah.
that and just hearing Phineas speak in the Zane Lowe interview and other interviews, it just was one of those things that I was like, "Wow,
And
okay."
from the outside too, I think if you are aware that it's her brother and that he's like always there, I think people just automatically are probably going to like, that's kind of weird. Like the brother's always with her for interviews and
But
stuff. Because if you don't dive in, you're
yeah,
not
that's
gonna
true.
know. And you're probably gonna think it's like a Angelina Jolie and her brother kind of
Oh
thing.
my
Like
god.
it's like some kind of weird component of it. It's like, no, it's not. They built this empire together,
Mhm.
and they're sticking together and they're making amazing things.
Oh. Yeah. So Phineas, if you're somehow listening to this, yes, we appreciate you. And I urge anyone too that's unfamiliar to dive into that and
Absolutely.
see what he
Like,
does
after
because
this
yeah.
episode, what I would love is if you never thought about looking into her before or
Mhm.
listening to the music or anything, to at least, look at some interviews, because I think it's gonna change your perspective just a little bit. And again, like I said, more than just the songs on the radio, like, look
Yes.
into, like, a whole works, and you're gonna see, like, all of the, oh man, like, it's a lot. And I understand, because trust me, like, just like Lisa said, like, I had the same thing going. Even early on, I had so many people being like, "Why haven't you listened to Billie Eilish yet? She's like dark, like she's a pop star, but like she really like sings really dark stuff. You really need to check her out." And I'm just like, no, absolutely not. No. And then I heard her on the radio for the first time. And I immediately, I was in the car driving, I remember. And then I heard it and I was like, oh my God, what is this? Because I immediately was drawn in, because I was like, this sounds creepy as fuck. And I love it. And they said it was Billie Eilish. And I was like, oh shit, what have I been missing this whole time? And I immediately dived in and I have not looked back.
And that's the thing too. And I think if anyone listening to this too, like that was me for a very long time. And I think again, it's just we've talked about it before where things are
Yeah.
shoved down. But I think if this record, and I know we'll talk about it later, but if this record doesn't get the recognition that it deserves,
I think it will.
I'm gonna be like, and again, at the
But,
end of the day, the Grammys are the Grammys, whatever. We know how they are these days. But
yeah.
legitimately I will be like, all right, this is done and over with. But yes, no,
Yeah.
pro Phineas over here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think next we should just dive into how it all started, which was the fact that Ocean Eyes was the first song, and it was originally written for Phineas's band, but he gave it to Billie because her dance teacher had asked them to write a song so that they could put choreography to it. And so after they made the song, they put it on SoundCloud just so it was somewhere, and they had noticed that it was getting praise from multiple different websites. And his manager, Phineas's manager, had gotten a hold of it and was like, "Hey, listen, like there's a lot of potential on this song,
Mhm.
and I think we need to look into it." Which obviously then led to them making the EP Don't Smile at Me. It ended up at number 14 on the Billboard 200, and which obviously then led to the Grammys, which led to today. And I think the biggest thing to realize that when this song was made and when it all started, Billie was only 13 years old.
I know, that's insane.
Isn't that wild to
That's
think?
oh,
I think about where I was when I was 13.
yeah.
I would not have been capable of doing anything like this.
No.
And it's just that's why I keep, like, saying, like, I don't think people understand if they don't know that she started at 13 years old and started writing songs at that age. That is wildly impressive.
Mhm.
Like, it's just unheard of almost. Like, I yeah, it, like, blows me away. It's, like, one of those moments where you're like, "Oh my gosh, you could do that at 13, and here I am at almost 37,
Oh,
and my
yeah.
life is not together at all." And I'm
No.
just like, "Whoa."
Yeah, and that's one of those things too that you bring up too, like, even just going back to Phineas too, like, very
Yeah.
thankful she had someone like her brother because somebody that young, we see what happens when they're in the limelight or the
Yes.
music world. So, thankfully, she had that kinda comfort and
I
someone that
think
saw her vision instead of, "Oh, let me make you this
yes.
way." No, you can be you, and look at her now.
I honestly think that is another big part of the success and, greatness and purity of Billie Eilish, is that the fact that she has had her older brother there the entire time
Mhm.
through everything that she's going through, that is, like, nobody could even imagine, right?
Yeah.
Blowing up at the age of 13. And that's another reason why I think it's different than compared to, like, a Taylor Swift, because, like, if she didn't have her brother there, and we're gonna get into, like, more things later, I don't think anybody could necessarily make it.
No.
Like she had, like you said, like that protection, she had that comfort, and that's super important for being that young and blowing up that fast because you have somebody by your side that is not going to be taking advantage of you
Mhm.
to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh my gosh. I think what's most important now to obviously bring it up, since this is what her whole entire podcast is about, is to talk about Billie Eilish and what like mental health kind of comes into her and her works. So even before doing like interviews and everything, I think it's very apparent in her songs. Like before she even talked about her mental health, like openly in front of a microphone for people to know about. Like I think it's just very apparent in the songs, but again, not everybody is going to connect with songs maybe the same. But I think, or even early on, you can tell in the lyrics that she has been through some struggles. She has been through depression, and she has said, I know I'm lucky, but I'm so unhappy.
Mhm.
My whole life, I've never been a happy person. I've been joyous, but I've not been a happy person. I experience joy and laughter, and I can find fun in things, but I'm depressed. I'm a
Mhm.
depressed person. And she's also talked about how in 2018, she was in Berlin at the time, and she was staying in a hotel room by herself, and she was getting very suicidal. She had a lot of suicidal ideations. She has opened up about how she had started self harm only a year after being discovered. And again, that's where I kind of like stop and I go back and I think about my age at that time because that's about the same age I also started going through all the same. I started going through depression and self harm and suicidal ideations around that same age. So to think of being shot into stardom at that same time, I can't imagine. Like, I'm sure that just exacerbated like everything in her. And to think of myself at that same age with that same, going through the same exact things, if I were to have the element of being shoved into public, and just a celebrity lifestyle like that, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
um
Like
going through that. Like it's just wild to even think. She's also talked about how online bullying has triggered quite a bit of it in the past. Whether it was people like talking about her appearance or just like how she sings or anything like, the typical kind of bullying that comes from being a celebrity. But the thing is, and I know everybody's going to be like, well, that's what it comes with the job and everything. But she was 13 when she started. And I think that adds a whole different element of how you're going to take online criticism
Mhm.
than if you were a adult when you get into celebrity. You know what I mean? It's different. You're going to handle things different. Your brain is not going to recept things the same as if you're an adult shoved into stardom. And I think that's really important that she has talked about that because I still think that like trolling and bullying online is not taken seriously. And we already know it's been proven that so many people have taken their lives because of that
Mhm.
alone.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I think it's really great that she's talked about that being in her position. She has also been open about how if her fans have been going through this and they've talked about it, about how they connect through all of this sadness and everything that she's talked about, that she always gives them the tightest hug that she can. And she always tells them to be nice to themselves and don't ever take that extra step to hurt yourself further. And I think that's a big deal because I'm sure at some point any celebrity that gets so famous along the line kind of loses touch with that. And something that I constantly see with Billie is that she does not like to run away from her fans.
No.
She likes her fan interactions. She's constantly purposely putting herself in things so she can interact with her fans on a personal level. And as big as she is, that is like unheard of.
Mhm.
Like, I don't care. Again, Swifties, I don't care. Come for me. But like, literally, Billie has been seen driving to go see a billboard of hers on the street and she sees a Billie fan, she'll stop her car and talk to them.
Yeah. No, that's
That's
one of the things
different.
I love about that. That's someone larger than life. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't even say anything else. I have to just
And
that's one thing
I
I adore
kind of
about her.
think maybe part of it is that she was younger. So, like,
Mhm.
she's going to kind of like feel like her fans are more than just fans. I feel like I think she understands, like, I obviously think she's safe enough to know, like, with like when it comes to like parasocial stuff, that there's going to be people that take it too far. Okay,
Right.
but I think the fact that she's younger, she's able to understand social relationships a bit more personably better than somebody who's older that got into the business, because like she knows it, you know what I mean? Like she's grown up with us, so she kind of sees us not just as fans, but I think maybe as like friendship in a way. We're the reason why we got her to where she is today, and I think she's very aware of that, and I think she's never really lost touch with that. Like obviously she's going to be like any celebrity who's going to be able to have things that we can't, and I think she's been pretty clear about that in some interviews. And but the fact is, like, that's where she's a little different. She still seems grateful. She seems very loving of the people that, take her works and feels with it. And I think she's trying her best to be a celebrity that we need, and I think that's really important.
It's been so important. She's been such an important voice because even me just looking at TikToks when this latest record came out, how many people have said, "Oh, I'm so seen," and this
Yes.
and myself included, which we'll get into
Yeah.
later. And I just think that I've always seen her be so wonderful to her fans. I think there was one where like she was in a car or something and like a
Hmm.
fan was out, but kind of what you're describing, and she was
It might
like,
have been the
"Hey."
same one.
Might have been, and it's just like, again,
But
I
then
can
again, you know what? I think there's been more than one too where
yeah.
I've seen her in her car and she'll stop for
Oh,
fans.
and she's big on
Yeah.
so big on mental health. I think one of the things
Yes.
I love about her is she said whether it was in Rolling Stone or any of those things when she has said about mental health and she's been at her lowest and when she was at her highest. And I think that was so
Yeah.
important to say that or have someone like
Yes.
her say that because so many people think, oh, like the main conversation in mental health is, I mean, G and I kind of experience this at times too, where, oh, you have this or you have that, or you even hear,
Yes.
like, not to be rude
It's
about the
always like, well,
boomers.
everything's fine, so I
Right.
don't I
Oh,
don't have
yeah.
the right to be
Oh,
upset.
I mean, I'm kinda
Mhm.
dealing with this right now with some people in my
I deal
life,
with it all the time.
for
All the
people oh,
time.
I know you do, and that's how you can relate
Yeah.
where the past few weeks, I've gone through one of the worst depressive episodes I've had, and it's weird because people think about, like, seasonal depression and just Christmas time, and I go through that.
Yeah.
Me, the summer is one of those times, and it
I
definitely reared its head this
I
summer.
think that people don't realize that because people always think
Mhm.
seasonal with Christmas, but the fact is you can be the complete opposite because there's
Yeah.
so many of us where we feel worse in the summer because,
Yes.
like, for me, when it comes to my health being worse in the summer, I think that exacerbates usually my depression and it makes me get more down because I am aware that I am more disabled when it comes to summertime, and that's really hard to deal with, especially as time has gone on. I feel horrible whenever I have very bad days, which anymore is most of the time. And I don't think people understand that seasonal depression doesn't always mean one certain season. It can be in any specific season. Like you'll be fine in the winter, but you're worse in the summer. That is still seasonal depression.
Yeah, and it's that's one of the things I appreciated about Billy being so open about that in many interviews and how, that she has access to so many things that maybe a normal person, I hate saying normal, but a regular person,
I mean, but
like and
yeah,
I appreciate her doing that and sharing those things and I relate to her in so many levels about her comments and how she's been with body dysmorphia. It's something I
yes,
struggle with and just honestly having someone that larger than life, which is why have I been the biggest fan always? No, but I've always even though I wasn't diving into her
there
music.
was, I feel like that with a lot of people, for me the same way, where it was like I wasn't going to push into it, but I was like I really like them as a person.
Right,
And then
exactly.
I didn't get into the
Yes.
music, and then finally something like clicked and I got into it, and I it's like, oh, there's a reason why I
Oh,
felt like this person was a good person. You know what I
right?
mean?
Oh, 1,000% with
Because it's
her.
happened to me with so many artists, and I find it so funny that that happens all the time. It's like we should always trust our gut. If we feel like this artist is a good person, it's probably because we would really connect to the music.
Yeah, and that's and I think she's such a strong advocate for women and just
Yes.
so and not even just women, women presenting, just
Yes, I was gonna say
everybody.
not even just women, women presenting. She will even talk about in certain circumstances, boys going through it too, which I'm gonna mention a little bit
Mhm.
later.
Yeah.
But she is always trying to make sure that everybody's included, which I think again comes with the age that it comes more naturally to her, whereas older generations, like some of us will be inclusive, but sometimes it doesn't come right out of the bat, like as it does with the younger generation. And that's one reason why I love the younger generation so much
Mhm.
because they're so inclusive and they're so including and it's something I feel like we've always should have had. And so it's just like one of those like lights in the dark whenever I see somebody like Billie Eilish, where it's like, this is the kind of what we've needed to see all
Y
along when it comes to
yes.
inclusivity.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I just love everything she stands for, and again, I
Yes.
just, I hope everyone else listening, and if you don't, just go look because again, she's incredible, and, I think there's a reason why she is larger than life, and that's the
Yeah.
relatability and what she's talking about is 100% part of it too.
So I'm going to swing back a little bit because I mentioned Berlin, and
Mhm.
that was the moment when she had her suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, in 2019, Billie had found this wall in Berlin that had this huge advertisement for her album. And it was across the street from this like little wall for like a railing upstairs. And she was like, "This is my wall." And she goes and she sits on it and takes a picture with the big advertisement in the background. And that was 5 years ago. And then she found out just recently that her fans had been visiting that wall ever since, writing on it and posing with it every album advertisement that had gone up on that wall. So she had found out and she went there because when she went there for the first time, that wall was clean.
Mhm.
There was no graffiti, there was nothing. And now it's full of messages to Billie. So she went there just recently when she was over there for the tour. She got a plaque that she signed and put it on the wall. So that is officially in Berlin. There is a Billy wall for fans to visit. And I love that. And I think it's
Mhm.
so interesting because what I think personally, I couldn't find any more information of why it happened, but this is what I think. Because of her sharing the fact that like she almost gave up in Berlin in 2018 and then her album this that she had posted in 2019 um which was her first major album and it was released and she was at that wall and she could have lost it all that year before and
Yeah.
not have been here. And I think fans took that as a this wall is to represent that you're still here and look how far you've come.
Mhm.
And when she found out, it is hilarious because I saw an interview of her talking to a crowd of fans. And she was like, I had no idea that people were doing this. And somebody had gotten it to her that it was happening, just like literally, like I think this tour. And when she saw it, she was just like, "Oh my god! Like I had no idea everybody would be posing with my advertisements there. They were all writing me messages, and it's just again like just shows that just beautiful connection of her with the fans and how she appreciates because like, she didn't have to go back there. She did. She went back, she put the plaque on the wall with her signing. She went and signed random little Billy messages on the wall too, hidden throughout the wall. She posed again at the advertisement for the new album being out in the background as a way of being like, here's 5 years ago, here's now. Um, and I just think that's beautiful. And I love that she did that.
I think that's and I think it's just what a beautiful way too to show her fans to keep going, and I think to have that there and for them to
Yes.
show her, like, "Look at how far you've come." I think
Right?
that's just
Yeah.
so
I think it's a
cool.
beautiful message because, like, that's how
I
I took it.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, and I think so many of us too, you don't consider that, and that's, That's incredible that that
I just think
exists.
it's beautiful, and I just
Yeah.
learned about this too, and I was so glad that I found that before writing the
Yeah.
script, and I was just like, "Oh my god, that's just so cool," and I love it. I'm
Yeah.
like, "If I ever make it to Berlin, I'm gonna have to go visit the
I was
wall."
just gonna say, we're gonna have to go to Berlin.
And I just love that, and then everybody, I was seeing, like, edits of her visiting the wall and everything, and because I love watching fan edits of Billie,
Yeah.
and people were saying how the Joe Keery song about Chicago,
Yes.
and they were saying Berlin is Billie's Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so beautiful. I absolutely love that. And it's things like that where it's like knowing that there's like a community of fans that are just they're just like so beautiful to each other. Because every time I see interactions of Billie fans together, everybody's just so sweet together, and it's just like
Mhm.
a beautiful little community where everybody's safe and so good to each other, and everybody gets it, and everybody understands why we have this like connection. And I just love to see it. I just love to see it.
Oh, yeah,
That
again,
just I
let's
just
all
love
go
it.
to Berlin.
I'm gonna have to send you like pictures and stuff of the wall so you can
Yes.
see it, or maybe even link it
Yeah.
to the episode. But yeah, oh, I just love it. So next, we're going to go to another heavy topic. So I'm sure we're going to be putting a trigger warning for this episode because we're going to be touching on quite a bit of heavy details. Because again, I don't think people realize, and I early on listening to Billie Eilish, whenever I even mentioned like it's like realizing how old she is and hearing these lyrics, like you just know she's gone through things, um, because the way that she is singing about him, the lyrics, it's not something you're just going to make a song about. It's something that you have to have lived through. Like, you know, it's things that you have to have known
Mhm.
to talk about in song. So we're going to touch a bit on Billie Eilish and when it comes to sexual abuse. She has talked about before in like interviews how she never really understood age differences when it came to anything in relationships. She has even talked about how when she was really young, she got exposed to some pretty like heavy duty pornography.
Mhm.
I have not seen like I don't even know if she shared exactly how she was shown that or why she was shown that, or she was like sneaking and finding it. I'm not sure on that part. So, but she has said how because of that, she knows that has traumatized her in a way of like thinking that really like I mean like graphic things are normal,
Mhm.
and that has made her really kind of speak out about when it comes to things like sexualizing people at a young age and everything, because like she knows from experience being exposed to something like that does mess with the way you think and the way you live through relationships. And I think that's really important that she's brought that up because
Yeah.
um I don't think a lot of people, you know, really think to talk about something like that, because I feel like even still when it comes to things like porn, it can be a little bit of a weird taboo thing to talk about. And the fact of her discovering some of these really graphic kinds at a young age is really important for her to talk about because I know she's not the only one,
Oh, and I think
you
a
know,
lot of us have also, like, even, like, in
in
talking
some
about
manner.
maybe how has
Like,
she I remember us back in the day, like, Cinemax, right? Like, I all you
yes,
did
that's
right?
exactly what I was thinking because
All
I
you
was
had to
like,
do is
I
turn,
remember
and
like
you could be
Cinemax
ex
after night, you
yeah,
would catch
right?
stuff. And that's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if she was purposely shown it or she snuck it because my
Right.
experience as a child, I would sneak things like that.
Oh, 1,000%. I think
And
we
I know
all
a lot
like,
of
the
people who have.
curiosity,
So
like
that's why I'm like, I'm not going to say that this is like she was shown it because like I know that's
right.
a type of abuse where you can be shown it by somebody who's older who knows that
Mhm.
that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
I don't know that context of it,
Right.
but I do know as somebody who snuck and saw very inappropriate things, whether it be Cinemax After Night or
Mhm.
Playboys,
Yeah, right? We've all
which give
been
it like sometimes it's like some of it's like yeah that's not like the worst thing in comparison, okay, but it's still things I probably shouldn't have been looking at when I was really young. And I think it's really important that she brings that up and
yes.
talks about it because she is one of the biggest advocates when it comes to children and online media.
Mm-hmm.
She's been very like, there needs to be some way to keep children away from this kind of thing. And just she is very much for like online children advocacy, which I think is very important. And I like to see this from the younger generations because unlike us, like if we're a millennial, like we had a time of childhood where we did not have the internet and we did not have screens. So like we don't have that same perception to be like, oh no, no, this fucked me up,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so having more kids from this younger generation who are quote unquote called like the tablet kids and stuff like that telling us how harmful it is, I think is very important so that anybody who becomes a parent or who is a parent currently can know how to like monitor online usage. I think is very important. And I like that she's talked about that, and I think that's super important. And it might seem like, whoa, and like literally you go like see like a Billie interview and you just see her talking about like, you know, graphic porn as a child. It's very unnerving to hear, but it does happen. And I think it's very important that she's brought it up, even though it's like, oh my God, when you hear that, you know?
Well, and how that can affect you. So, okay, like she saw it when
Yes.
she was younger, but like those certain things that you're exposed to, or even like, which, and thinking about who she recently dated and things of that nature,
Yes,
these little
absolutely.
things
Like,
all build up to later
yes,
in
I
life
don't
and
think
things.
people always realize that, and I've learned that a lot in therapy,
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of things from our childhood, even if we don't think they were that big of a deal, but as my therapist said, if you still remember it and you still remember that it's something that upset you in some way, that's trauma.
Yeah.
That is trauma, and you can try to make it seem like it's not a big deal, but if you still remember being upset about it, you have dealt trauma. You've been dealt with some
Mm-hmm.
trauma. And I think that's really important to bring up. But yeah, I wanted to really make sure I included the part where she talked about how she's never understood age gaps because not only have we obviously seen that in her last relationship, which every one of us were worried.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't see a single fan that was for it. All of us were very concerned. I think even younger fans were concerned. Um, and I think we're all just very glad that she's away from that and safe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not the kind to talk about what's happened with certain people and specifics. For instance, like, there was an interview that she had with Finneas, and she talked about how um, there is a lot of abuse in the industry, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
happened to her and how somebody that she was working with was trying to in some way use her like in a sexual manner, and she told Phineas because obviously Phineas is her brother, he is her right hand, like I trust more than anybody, that's who I'm going to talk to about it. She talks to Phineas obviously gets him fired, but she talked about this happens all the time, and she goes, it's not just to girls, it's happening to boys too, which again
Mm-hmm.
brings in that inclusivity that she does to recognize it's like this is not just girls, it happens to boys too. We just don't hear about the boys as much sometimes, but it's happening. And I think that's super important to hear from her, especially knowing that she has been in the spotlight since she's been 13. And again, if you don't dive into her background and everything, again, that becomes a problem if you don't realize how young she was when she started, because you might be thinking this is a full grown person. And unfortunately, certain girls, and this is going to come off a little gross, but I'm going to get somewhere with it. Certain girls develop faster than others.
Oh, yeah.
And because of that, you're going to be skewed when it comes to age because sometimes some people associate like breast with being older, and that's not true. And that is a big reason why Billie's trademarked outfits, where they are very baggy, there's no form to what she's wearing, because at a young age, she knew that that would be a problem. So she wore baggy clothes so people could not sexualize her form.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until her choice after she was 18 that she started kind of messing with wearing things a little bit more revealing and just basically trying to find herself. Like, I know when I turned 18, I also was like, do I still want to be alternative? And that's when I got weird and like started dressing more normal, which now I'm like, that was not me, but that was me experimenting, trying to figure out who I was. And I think that's what happened with Billie in that scenario, because now we have her back in her baggy, trademark look. And honestly, you can tell she's happier. She's happier in this apparel because, like, I'm sure she was noticing people probably being, like, even now that she was of age, just being directed towards her body. And we have her back into her baggy gear. And you can tell, I feel like she seems happier.
Yeah.
I think she seems more comfortable, and I think that's so important. And I really like that she shared that to begin with, that this is why we're really big clothes, because I'm 14-year-old girl and you don't need to be looking at my boobs. Like,
Mhm.
um, and I think that's really important that she kind of recognized that at a young age, because if we think about it from past pop stars who did not take that approach, like Britney Spears. There are a lot of old interviews that have come out with her when she was like 16, and the interviewer is a male talking about her breasts.
Yeah.
And so I think we could very well see a more traumatized, like, Billie Eilish if she did not wear the clothes that made her feel more comfortable and not objected in. And, like, obviously, we know she's already been through other kinds of trauma, but, like, if she didn't do that, we would have more trauma on top of it. And I think that's such an important thing to highlight. And the fact that she's recognized what that does.
Oh, 1,000% because that was one thing. I mean, we've seen it with certain musicians make comments, "Oh, I can't wait till you're 18." I'll
Yeah.
just say it, Drake. Drake is one of them.
Yep.
I love Degrassi, but he's
Hmm.
been known to say things like that, and I
No,
think
I've noticed it for a very long time. That's
yeah.
why all these people that are now discovering it just with the Kendrick Lamar stuff, I was like,
Oh
where
god,
have
yeah.
you all been?
Yeah, and I
He
think
has been openly talking about underage girls and
yeah.
texting them for a very long time. And it's been very alarming to me.
Mhm.
And this is where I've noticed it too, is that the people that have always known it, and this isn't new news, has been people like me and like you who have been through abuse. So we have seen it firsthand. And the other ones who have not paid attention or forgot about it are like men
Oh, yeah.
or like girls who just either don't realize they've been through it or just haven't actively been through something that close. And I think that just goes to show like the society and like why that happens. Like, we've seen it happen with Drake. Um Not with like grooming, but with abuse. We've seen it with Chris Brown,
Mhm.
where he beat Rihanna and people forgot about it, and he's still making music now. And people seem to have forgotten that that has happened. It's happened with multiple male artists, whether it's come to grooming or just abuse in general, where people seem to have forgotten the past unless you've been through it. And then all of us have actively known it and have always been aware.
Oh,
Um,
and I can easily say too, I mean, just going and being in the scene and, witnessing things, being a young girl that just really loved alternative music and you wanna
yes.
hang out, there have been many older people that have approached me, and I've been lucky enough to not have any issues, but for the most part, but the fact is I was approached, I'm not the first one, I'm not gonna be the last one, and
Yeah.
I think it's something that I admire Billy for taking that and saying, "You know what? I'm gonna have control over this, of what's being
Yes.
shown," and I think it was very smart, and it was something that
I
it
think so
again,
too.
it made me really respect her because, yeah, like you said, like with Britney Spears and other people we've seen,
Yes.
what do people go towards? Their bodies right away, always, like, even Camila
Always.
Cabello you were talking
If
about.
you are a female artist, they are going to judge you from what you wear, what your body looks like.
Mhm.
And like you don't even have to necessarily be overweight, but if they notice that you have gained any kind of weight, they are going to tell you about it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and Billie has also gone through that, which is the whole point of the song Skinny on the new
Mhm.
album.
Yes, oh my gosh, my
Um,
favorite.
and I just like, I don't, oh my gosh. Yeah, that song is very relatable to anybody who's been through body dysmorphia in any way, because
Yeah.
I went through the opposite where I went from very skinny to gaining a lot of weight. And now I'm trying to like lose some weight to see if it helps my health mainly. But like, you can still relate to that, even if it's the opposite, you know, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I think she's just so intelligent. Something else that like that she's talked about as well, not just like industry abuse, but just abuse in general. She's talked about how she's gone through like rape and statutory rape.
Mhm.
And she has told people like, I'm letting you know this happened. Um, but I am not going to tell you who it is. And she's like, I will never tell you who it is because it doesn't need to be said. And I think that's super important that she's brought that up as well. As somebody who has gone through abuse, I cannot say my ex's name without being triggered. So for her to see somebody that um, well known talk about something like that, sorry, I'm tearing up a little bit, so
Aw.
bear with me. Um, it's super important. It's very validating because it's one of those things where I feel super weird that I cannot say this name, which sucks too because it's a very common name.
Yes.
And it's gotten really awkward because I have had to deal with it in a work setting because it's a popular name,
Mhm.
which I push through it, but it's really hard. And everybody who knows me knows I have a certain really silly name that I refer to my ex as when we talk about him. I
Yeah.
don't know if we'll out what that is, but like this it's just that's how I can talk about him without getting like too triggered. And I just felt very seen to know her be like, I'm not gonna tell you his name. Because in a way, that gives them a bit of power back, doesn't it? If we talk about how much this person took this from me and we tell you the name or who it is, then that person in a way can have some kind of gratification to be like, yeah, that was me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And then kind of use that somehow to their advantage. So hearing her kind of talk about that in a way just really hit home for me. And on that note, something to know is that from Happier Than Ever, the song Your Power is all about
Mhm.
being an abuse survivor. So if you're not aware of that Billie Eilish song and you want to and you've been through abuse and you're not aware that is a song, I highly recommend
Mhm.
if you need a good cry. Because
Yes.
it's just all about, getting your power back from your abuser.
That song in general was one again where she was really pushed on me. It made me really look a couple of them, but that one
Yeah.
specifically and hearing her again and also just feeling really bad that she's gone through that as an
Yes.
artist
I
and
know.
even though she took all
And
those
just
steps to
again,
try and
thinking of
protect
how young
herself.
she is, like
Yeah.
thinking of how
Oh.
young she is and all of this that like I can relate to, knowing that she's
Mhm.
gone through it already. Just it really does something to you as
Mhm.
somebody who deals with mental illness and trauma from an older age, seeing somebody so young singing about it, it leads a whole nother dynamic to it. And it's just like I want to mother hen her. And it's like I know like that is a celebrity. She doesn't know who I am, but at the same time, I'm like, she has been through so much that I've been through, and she is only 22.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
And it's just and for her to do it in a public setting at that, it's just so appreciated
Mhm.
that she talks about it so openly. Cause I think it's such an important thing that she is so open about it.
Yeah, and I think that's why she's so loved. I think because
Yeah.
of those things and her being so open and almost feeling so normal in the world of being a
Yeah,
celebrity. Like, I
yeah.
think that to me, and I think, like, even I know we'll talk about our favorite songs soon, but, like, my thing is, like, even hearing her, like, giggle and, like, about lunch when, like, Finneas
Oh,
will
I love
talk
it.
about it, and it's like,
I know.
you know what I mean? And I think she's
Yeah.
just a normal girl who,
She is,
and
yeah.
I think at the end of the
And
day,
that's where, like, I, like, talked about my fiancé about it, not to call him out again, but, like, he's told me before where he's told me why he doesn't like her, he's like, she's just kinda annoying." I'm like, "You
mhm,
realize she started when she was, like, 13? Like, she's a child. Like, that's probably why you're annoyed
that's
because
probably
she just
why,
for the
yeah.
mere fact that she's still a child, like, that's so any way that, like, you're like, "Why is she so, like, goofy and stuff?" It's like, it's because she's really young. And I think that's another reason why a lot of people who are resisting her don't realize it's like she's acting like her age. And
Mhm.
I honestly think that's beautiful to see
Yeah,
because no matter how much publicity she has been given, she is still a kid. And I love to still, like, even though she's talked about her depression and stuff, like, we can still see those bits of joy she's talked about
yes.
and she can still laugh. And I think that's really important because when we don't see her being silly and making jokes and laughing, that's when we're going to need to worry.
I know this was a long one, so thanks for sticking with it. And I know that Justine, this was one I'm very proud of you for doing this one, but
I feel like you can definitely tell when my info dumping is going to come out with my
mhm.
autism because if it's a topic that I know really well, you're going to get a lot. You're going to
Yes.
get a lot of information. So that's another reason why it's so long. So if you guys listen to both of these, I really appreciate it because this is one of those topics where it's like if I were to leave something out, I feel like you'd be missing a very vital aspect of this artist. And there's just so much to her, and she's been through so much. And I think it's really important to try to highlight all of that. So if you listen to this, I appreciate it so much because I worked really hard. Like, no joke. When I
Yes.
was finishing writing the script yesterday, I was like narrowing it, like making it more clean and everything. My head hurt after, and I was like, like really somebody with a very small brain. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just like, whoa, I've been thinking with my brain too much today. But I put in a lot of love, sweat, and tears into this. So I really appreciate anybody who's given it a chance, and especially if you didn't even really care for Billy and were willing to listen to this episode and see why she's so important to me and so many other fans. And now Lisa, now that she's joined
Yes.
us, but I appreciate you guys for tuning in and make sure you follow us on all of our accounts. We're on everything. You can stream us obviously on any site or even just our website. And if you could give us a rating or a review and just follow us, we would love that. And we will see you guys for part two.
Yes. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.